Hi, my name is Blake Ross-Kelly. I am the instructional co-chair for NCOA Basketball. I will be guiding you through this instructional video. Our goal this year is to make the instructional process as efficient and educational as possible. We are currently in the process of moving many of the instructional meetings to online training. This serves a few purposes. The first purpose this serves is greater uniformity in the instructional program. By providing the same material and same training to all officials, we are able to come to a higher level of like-mindedness. Secondly, by moving the training to the virtual world, we allow you, the members of NCOA, to have more flexibility in when, where, and how you obtain instruction. There are many members of the NCOA that live in the corners of our area, and we are trying to accommodate them as much as possible. We are aware that we still require many of you to travel long distances on multiple occasions, and we are working to address this. It is our goal to eliminate yet another physical instructional meeting and move it to an online webinar-type training beginning next year. That means within 2 years, we will go from 4 physical meetings down to 3 this year and down to 2 by the next. The instruction presented in the video for this week will focus on an understanding of the difference between marginal and illegal contact. 5 different segments will be presented in this video that each relate back to the general theme of marginal versus illegal contact. They are marginal versus illegal, rebounding fouls, post play, start, develop, finish, and intentional and flagrant fouls. For each of these segments, we will identify the appropriate rules and philosophies that you must master in order to get these plays right. After viewing this video, there will be a quiz that will test your comprehension of the material presented. The answers to the questions on the quiz will all be provided throughout the video. You can access the quiz at www.ncoa.arbitersports.com. Click the Testing tab. Remember, you must complete this quiz by November 3rd. For each segment of the video, there will be a You Make the Call play, where you will evaluate how the play should be called. Part of the quiz will be answering how you would have called each of these plays. After time has passed for viewing this video, the answers to the quizzes will be released, including the You Make the Call plays. Although this video is not a full hour in length, we anticipate that you will have to pause and review segments of it multiple times. For that reason, it should take you an hour of viewing to fully appreciate the fruits of this video. Feel free to rewind and watch the video as many times as you need in order to understand and master the rules and philosophies for these plays. You may also want to have a paper and writing utensil handy for taking notes. This might be helpful when taking the quiz. Also, as you watch these plays, please keep in mind that the object of this video is not to demean, criticize, or recognize any of the individuals in these clips. These videos are merely training and learning tools. We all make good and bad calls, and no one should be evaluated based on a select few plays. Keep in mind that each of these plays has a teaching point that will be illustrated. There may be other violations or fouls that occur in the video clips that are unrelated to the teaching point. Remember to stay focused on the principle being presented and don't let yourself get sidetracked. We thank you for taking the time to dedicate yourself to becoming a better official. We hope you find the video educational and a valuable resource. Remember, if you have any questions regarding how to meet the required number of hours to become a certified NCOA and CIF basketball official, log on to www.ncoa.arbitersports.com. The meeting dates and hours earned for attendance at each meeting are delineated there. Just click on the Basketball tab. Enjoy this week's instructional video. Incidental contact is contact with an opponent which is permitted and which is not a foul. The mere fact that contact occurs does not constitute a foul. When 10 players are moving rapidly in a limited area, some contact is certain to occur. Contact, which may result when opponents are in equally favorable positions to perform normal defensive or offensive movements, should not be considered illegal, even though the contact may be severe. Similarly, contact which does not hinder the opponent from participating in normal defensive or offensive movements should be considered incidental. Illegal contact is contact not permitted by rule that affects a player's rhythm, speed, balance, or quickness, RSBQ. It is the responsibility of the official to set the line between marginal and illegal contact, taking into account RSBQ and the skill level of the players involved. In contests that have players that are bigger, faster, and stronger, the line between marginal and illegal should be moved to account for the player's ability to play through contact that does not affect their RSBQ. The opposite is true for contests whose players' RSBQ is more easily affected by more slight contact. While this line may change from contest to contest, it is imperative that marginal and illegal contact is ruled in a consistent manner throughout a contest and is judged the same on both ends of the floor. Let's watch some plays. This sequence is a good example of the crew having patient whistles and allowing the players to play through incidental contact. At the beginning of the transition, White 32 secures the long rebound and is contacted by Black 25, who is late to the ball. However, the contact does not impede White 32's ability to make a forward pass to his streaking teammate. This contact is marginal, and the officials correctly held their whistles. Another principle to consider on this play is possession consequence. Because the contact was not consequential to the offensive team's possession, a foul is not warranted. Finally, at the end of the clip, White 21 is driving to the basket, and the defender Black 11 extends his hand and contacts the dribbler. However, the dribbler's RSBQ is not affected, and he is able to obtain his ultimate goal, which is to score at the basket. This contact is marginal. As a final note, don't be fooled by this flop by the defender. Good no call by the official. Let's watch this sequence one more time from start to finish. Let's watch another play. This next play is similar to the end of the previous clip. Pay close attention to the ball handler and the primary defender. The dribbler beats his defender and has an open lane into the middle of the key. Just like in the last play, the defender puts his hand on the dribbler's back as he drives towards the basket. In this play, however, we can see that the dribbler's speed is adversely affected as he is accelerated forward by the push in the back, and subsequently he loses possession. Now let's watch the clip from start to finish. Let's take one more look. This next clip shows illegal contact by the defender on a dribble handoff. Contact that reroutes, impedes, or dislodges a player is illegal contact and should be called a foul. In this play, after receiving the ball on a handoff, the offensive player is unable to continue in his path as his rhythm is disrupted by the contact caused by the protruding knee of the defender. This kind of contact is illegal and should be called a foul. Now let's watch the play from start to finish. One more time. Remember, contact which does not hinder the opponent from participating in normal defensive or offensive movements should be considered incidental. We do not want to interject whistles into the game that are unnecessary or that do not help the game. In this next play, the defender makes contact with the dribbler that does not adversely affect the dribbler's RSBQ. He is still able to continue in his path towards the basket, and the whistle only stops the flow of the game and takes away a potential scoring opportunity from the offense. Furthermore, this is a high-impact call. This foul puts the offense into the bonus and gives them free throws that may not have been warranted in a tightly contested game with only 2 minutes to play. Now let's watch this play from start to finish. Let's see that one more time. Now it's time for the You Make the Call play. Watch this sequence and determine how you would officiate this play. Another look, again. One last look.
22, Edward Ware, returning into the lineup for the Cougars, replacing UC.
Rebounding action can be difficult to officiate. For that reason, 2 categories for rebounding fouls have been developed to make it easier to recognize the difference between marginal and illegal contact. All fouls that are called on rebounding action must fit into one of these 2 categories. If the play does not fit into one of the categories, the contact is marginal and no foul should be called. The 2 different categories mentioned are possession consequence fouls and cleanup fouls, and will be described in this segment. The first category is possession consequence. Contact that is prohibited by rule, which interferes with a player's ability to gain possession of a rebound, is illegal contact and must be called a foul. If the contact does not interfere with a player's ability to gain possession of the ball, the contact is marginal and no foul should be called. The key to getting these plays right is to have a patient whistle and to see the whole play. Now let's watch some plays that demonstrate the principle of possession consequence. In this first play, a player for the white team quickly darts toward the basket after his teammate shoots the ball and gains an advantageous rebounding position. After he elevates to grab the rebound, a player in black contacts him and knocks him to the ground, preventing him from rebounding the ball. As a result of the contact by the player in black, the player in white is unable to secure the ball. This is illegal contact, and a foul is correctly called. Now let's take a look at the play. Here's a second look. In this next play, there is a 2-shot sequence. The player who shoots and misses the first shot is in an advantageous position to rebound the second shot. However, the defender in white boxes him out and pushes him under the hoop and prevents the player in black from gaining possession of the ball. This is illegal contact and a foul is correctly called. Now let's take a look at this play. There is a common misconception among many people in the basketball world that it is legal to displace or push an opponent during rebounding action so long as your back is to your opponent. This is often referred to as blocking or boxing or screening out. While it is certainly legal to obtain a position between an opponent and the basket and then maintain that position by moving laterally, it is most certainly illegal to use the back or hind parts to move or displace an opponent under any circumstances. Here's the play one more time. In this next play, number 55 black clearly pushes number 5 white, who is in an advantageous rebound position. The push is strong enough to displace white number 5 and enable black number 55 to get the rebound. There is clearly possession consequence, and a rebounding foul is correctly called. Here's a look at the play. When officiating rebounding action, key in on and pay special attention to those players who are in a non-advantageous position behind a player. These are the players that are most likely to hurt us. Let's watch that play one more time, and this time through, see if you can identify those players which are most likely to hurt us on a rebound. For this next play, focus your attention on the two players in rebounding position in the middle of the key. The player in red has established an advantageous rebounding position and is boxed out number 45 for white without pushing or displacing him. When the rebound comes, number 45 elevates and jumps on top of the red player. Because of this illegal contact, white number 45 secures possession of the ball. This is a foul on white number 45. At the table, this foul should be reported as a push. The term over the back is misleading and should be very rarely or never used. It is not uncommon for a player to legally reach over the back of an opponent to obtain possession of the ball without making illegal contact with that opponent. However, that is not the case in this play, and a foul is correctly called. The second category in rebounding action is cleanup. These fouls result from contact that is so obvious or severe so that, even though there is no adverse possession consequence, the play demands a whistle. In this next play, there is a shot and the ball goes in the basket. Number 11 white jumps to get the rebound which never comes. Number 3 green pushes number 11 while he is airborne and knocks him to the ground. Even though the ball went in and there is no possession consequence, this contact is severe enough that it does not belong in the game and thus needs to be cleaned up. A foul would have been a correct call in this instance. Now it's time for you to make the decision. Watch the following play and decide if you have a foul, and if so, on which player. Post-play has become a huge topic in the officiating world. It has been a point of emphasis for years and will be for years to come. Post play is one of the toughest scenarios to officiate in basketball. The rulebook defines illegal defensive post play as any use of the hands, legs, or body in an attempt to control the movement of the offensive player. Consider these three key terms when officiating post play: reroute, impede, and dislodge. When it becomes apparent that a defender has rerouted, impeded, or dislodged an offensive player, it should cross your mind that there may be illegal contact on the play. Rerouting a player simply means taking an offensive player off the route he or she intends to go. The offense has a right to any position on the court that is not already occupied by an opponent, and the defense shall not illegally reroute the offensive player by using the body, hands, or legs. Impeding an offensive player means to slow or divert the player from the original path they were attempting to go. Similar to rerouting, a defensive player may not impede or slow down an offensive player from making a move by illegally using his hands, knee, or body. The final term to understand when officiating post play is dislodging an offensive player. When an offensive player has a position in the post, he or she is allowed to maintain that position until he or she decides to move. If a defensive player moves, by the way of his hands, legs, or body, the offensive player off that position, this shall be called a defensive foul. Remember that it is your responsibility to judge what contact is marginal and what contact is illegal, particularly when it comes to post play. Players are very often physical in the post, and considerable contact will certainly take place. That does not necessarily mean a foul has occurred. It is your responsibility as an official to referee the defense and judge the legality of the contact. Now let's watch some plays. Our first play is a clip taken from an NBA game. Keep your focus on the highlighted post player. Blue number 21 illegally wraps his arm around the offensive player. This contact impedes the offensive player's ability to make a play on the ball. The illegal contact provides a clear advantage to the defense in allowing him to be the first to the ball. When officiating plays in the post, be aware of any use of the hands or arms that impedes a player from making normal offensive or defensive movements. This play is correctly called a foul on the defender by the lead official. This next play is a good example of what we call too much. Pay close attention to the two players in the key. They are constantly bumping each other throughout the possession. Up until this point, this is mutual marginal contact, and correctly no whistle is yet put on the play. At the point the offensive team finally makes a pass into the post, the offensive post player has established a position on the lane line. As the offensive player retrieves the basketball, he is dislodged from his original position and is put in a less advantageous position due to the illegal contact by the defender. The lead official correctly calls a foul on the defensive post player. A common tactic that many defensive post players use to neutralize an offensive post player's advantageous position is the placement of the knee in the offensive player's rear. Do not allow the defensive player to dislodge or displace an offensive player with their knee. This is a foul. For this next play, direct your focus to the two post players on the strong side lower block. As the post entry pass is made, we are witness to the famous swim move performed by the defensive post player. This move is successful in neutralizing the offensive post player's ability to get to the ball. However, the swim move is illegal contact that impedes the freedom of movement of the offensive player and shall not be permitted. The lead official correctly calls a foul on the defender. When we are officiating post play, it is important to analyze the type of matchup that we are officiating. It can be helpful to determine if there is a fair and equal matchup between opposing players in the post. In these next two plays, pay special attention to the matchups in the post and see how it affects the outcome of the play. When we look at the matchup in this first play, it does appear that both players match up well physically. This is important when it comes to flopping and fool the referee type plays in the post when the matchup is big versus small. Next, we see the offensive player initiate contact trying to back down the defender who is in a legally obtained position. The first bump is permitted. The second bump then knocks the defender to the floor and is correctly ruled a player control foul by the lead official. Remember, the defender is just as entitled to the space on the floor as the offensive player. When contact occurs that displaces a player or dislodges him, a foul should be called. When we say that you should analyze the matchup in the post, that does not mean to suggest that you should be anticipating a foul on one player or another solely based on their size. However, you should be aware in order to correctly judge marginal versus illegal contact in these situations. Notice the type of matchup we have in the post on this play. We can quickly identify that there is a size disparity in the matchup and that the two players are not equal. Therefore, we have a responsibility to referee to ensure that this matchup remains fair throughout the play. When the smaller guard uses his body to displace or dislodge the post player, the matchup is no longer fair and a foul must be called. Both the center and lead officials correctly recognize and penalize this illegal contact. Recognizing the disparity in this matchup early on can help you quickly identify the illegal contact by the defender. Obviously, not all illegal contact in the post is initiated by the defensive player, nor in situations when we have a disparity in size or post matchup do we typically have a foul on the smaller player or on the bigger player. Remember, the point is to be aware. We see on this transition play, the trail to lead official does a nice job of hustling down the floor and picking up the first matchup in the post. We see the player in white, who is much smaller than the player in blue, obtains position first. The lead recognizes that the offensive big player is coming down the floor and braces himself for imminent contact. When the big gets down the floor, he uses illegal arm movements to displace the smaller player on the block. This contact is too much to consider marginal, and a team control foul is correctly called by the lead official. Now it's time for the You Make the Call play. Take a look at this play and determine when you would blow your whistle to call this rough play in the post. And on whom do you have a foul? The offense or the defensive player? There are three basic stages of plays to the basket. In order to properly officiate plays to the basket, you must be able to identify these stages: start, develop, and finish. When an offensive player begins his or her movement towards the basket, he or she must be allowed freedom of movement. Many times a defender will put hands on a ball handler as he or she begins his or her move that disallows the offensive player from making their move. This is a foul if it affects the offensive player's RSBQ. We should only call fouls at the start or finish of a play and almost never in the development stage. As a final point, let's remember the definition of continuous motion as stated in the rules book. Continuous motion applies to a try or tap for field goals and free throws, but it has no significance unless there is a foul by any defensive player during the interval, which begins when the habitual throwing movement starts a try or with the touching on a tap and ends when the ball is clearly in flight. If an opponent fouls after a player has started a try for goal, he or she is permitted to complete the customary arm movement, and if pivoting or stepping when fouled, may complete the usual foot or body movement in any activity while holding the ball. These privileges are granted only when the usual throwing motion has started before the foul occurs and before the ball is in flight. Continuous motion does not apply if a teammate fouls after a player has started a try for a goal and before the ball is in flight. The ball becomes dead immediately. Now let's watch some plays. For this play, focus on the ball handler and the primary defender. As the ball handler begins to start his move, the defender immediately puts two hands on the dribbler. As a group, we must consistently call this contact that occurs at the start of a player's move a foul. Two hands on a dribbler is an automatic. Now let's watch this play from start to finish. This play also shows how important it is to call the initial illegal contact by the defender a foul, because after the first foul, the defender embellishes the contact by the dribbler's forearm in an attempt to fool the referee into calling an offensive foul. Let's watch that all the way through one more time. Once a player gets head and shoulders by his defender, or has broken free from the defense and has a path to the basket, he or she has entered the development stage of the play. During this stage, we want to have a very patient whistle. The offensive player's goal is to get to the basket and score. We do not want to frustrate that goal by putting an unnecessary whistle on the play. The timing of a whistle in a play is very important. Take the following play and the next as examples of poor whistle timing. Let's watch. The trail official chooses to blow his whistle during the development stage of the play after the ball handler has beaten his defender and before the play has finished. The contact by the defender is marginal because it does not affect the offensive player's RSBQ. The result of this poorly timed whistle is the denial of a made basket and an unnecessary disruption in the flow of the game. The timing of your whistle is imperative to successfully officiating plays of this type. Now let's watch this play from start to finish one more time. This next play is another lesson in whistle timing. On an initial viewing of this play, it might appear that the lead official demonstrates a patient whistle, seeing the whole play, allowing it to start, develop, and finish. The whistle doesn't seem to come until the finish of the play, after the offensive player has begun his habitual shooting motion. Let's watch.
This is about as complete a player as I've seen him be, and his development in that area is significant.
And Dave, you and I have talked.
However, upon further review of this play, we can see that the lead official instead disallows the shot and points to the end line, indicating that a foul occurred at some point during the development stage of the play. Had the lead official shown more patience, he may have been able to recognize the illegal contact by the defender that occurred after the offensive player had begun his habitual shooting motion. Let's watch this clip one more time and see if you can identify the beginning of the offensive player's habitual shooting motion.
This is about as complete a player as I've seen him be, and his development in that area is significant.
And Dave, you and I have talked.
As I've seen him be, and his development in that area is significant.
And Dave, you and I.
This next play is a good example of proper officiating the start, development, and finish of a play. The try for goal begins with the start of the habitual shooting motion. The habitual shooting motion is the movement that a player makes prior to the release of the ball in a try for goal that is natural to each shot. This may include the gather of the ball from a dribble, steps taken following the gather and preceding the shot, and the upward motion of the arms towards the basket in attempt or try for goal. The officiating crew in this clip show great patience in holding their whistles until the play has finished. They correctly penalize the defender for illegal contact and count the basket as this contact occurred following the start of the offensive player's habitual shooting motion. Now let's watch this play from start to finish.
Big time again, he went right to him.
Now let's watch this play from the end line view.
And being willing to do it. He's into the shooting motion when the bump occurred. Miller wonders about it.
Let's take one final look. Now it's time for the You Make the Call play. Watch this play and determine how you would officiate the following sequence.
He's brought to the table, especially when Bennett and Ashley have missed games. He and Artis have been so good.
Been super rebounding, defending, handling the ball. Not a great outside shooter, but he can make a shot. I think Steve Fisher right now has one. Defending,
Take another look.
handling the ball. Not a great outside shooter, but he can make a shot. I think Steve Fisher right now has one.
Here's one last look.
Handling the ball. Not a great outside shooter, but he can make a shot. I think Steve Fisher right now has one.
Intentional fouls and flagrant fouls are tough decisions that we, as referees, are put in a position to make. Let us first talk about the definition of each of these fouls. An intentional foul is a personal or technical foul that may or may not be premeditated and is not based solely on the severity of the act. Intentional fouls include, but are not limited to, contact that neutralizes an opponent's obvious advantageous position, contact away from the ball with an opponent who is clearly not involved with the play, contact that is not a legitimate attempt to play the ball or player specifically designed to stop the clock or keep it from starting, excessive contact with an opponent while playing the ball. A flagrant foul may be a personal or technical foul of a violent or savage nature, or a technical non-contact foul which displays unacceptable conduct. It may or may not be intentional. If personal, it involves but is not limited to violent contact such as striking, kicking, and kneeing. If technical, it involves dead ball contact or non-contact at any time which is extreme or persistent, vulgar or abusive conduct. Fighting is a flagrant act. Now that we are all familiar with the rules as they are written, let's discuss some ways to help identify the difference between a common, intentional, and flagrant foul. The first thing we should look at is the potential for injury of the player. Is the player in a position where he or she can get hurt easily? Is the player airborne and in a defenseless position? If the answer to either of these questions is yes, you may want to consider an upgrade from a common foul to intentional. The next thing we should be looking for is the reaction of the players. Does the defender go and assist the player that was just fouled? Or does he or she walk away as if the hard foul was intentional? Being aware of this can help you determine the intent of the act and come to a conclusion as to whether an intentional foul is the correct call. A final sign to look for is the attempt at playing the basketball. If the defender makes a legitimate attempt to block a shot or steal the ball, then there may not be a reason to upgrade from a common foul. These signs that point to contact being deemed an intentional foul are not always clear, but they are tools that can help you get the play right. It is important that when these types of hard fouls occur, that we handle the situation properly. After a hard foul, emotions are high and tempers tend to flare. We should definitely close in on the play so that nothing further occurs following the foul. Your antennas should be up and aware when in these situations. Also, make sure to talk to your partners after these types of plays. It is important to get the perspective of each member of the crew, as they will each have had a different look and can provide much needed information. The most important thing to do is to get the play right, using all of the information available. Now, let's watch some plays. This first play shows a common situation that games tend to reach in closely contested contests. A team that is ahead will attempt to stall for time, while the trailing team will foul in order to stop the clock. Fouling at the end of a game is a legitimate strategy, so long as it is done within the constraints of the rules. In this play, however, you see the defender two-hand shoves the offensive player. The defender made no attempt to play the basketball, and the contact was excessive. Therefore, this is correctly called an intentional foul by the trail official. Notice how the coach for the blue team steps out onto the floor and grabs his player, preventing him from getting into an altercation with the defender who fouled him. Until this year, the head coach was unable by rule to do this. A rules change for the 2013-2014 season allows the head coach to enter the court in the situation where a fight may break out or has broken out to prevent the situation from escalating. Let's watch the play one more time. In this next play, notice the offensive player get held in the middle of the key during the rebounding sequence. Both players get tangled up, and the player in the white jersey puts his hand straight in the air after the lead official blows his whistle. It is unclear from a viewing of this video as to why, but the player in the green jersey two-hand shoves his opponent to the floor. This is a dead ball contact foul, which by rule is technical, and because the foul was of a violent nature, it was correctly ruled as flagrant, and the offending player was ejected from the game. Immediately following the incident, the officiating crew closes in to break up the potential fight. This crew did a nice job of ensuring that this situation did not escalate into something worse. However, in similar situations, it may be best for the third official, or in a crew of two, the second official if possible, to stay back to keep an eye on the benches and maintain a big picture look of the action should further penalties need to be assessed. Let's watch this play one more time. Notice how after the potential fight is averted, the crew takes both teams and walks them, escorting them to their benches, separating them from further activity. The calling official then reports his foul to the table. Be sure to meet together as a crew to make sure that you have all the information needed to assess the correct penalties, especially if there are more that need to be called. In our next play, we see a player drive to the basket in transition. The offensive player trips and falls to the ground. The defender jumps in the air and comes down on the offensive player. Both referees do a good job of closing in on the play and making sure nothing escalates. To the lead and center officials, this play looked worse than it actually was. This would be a great time for the trail official to come in and provide information on the play, since he had an outside open look. The lead and center official were fooled, and this play was incorrectly ruled an intentional foul. After both teams are separated, it is very important that the entire crew meets to discuss plays that are being considered as intentional that are not immediately clear. We want to have as much information as possible in determining plays of this nature, and that information can and should come from every member of the crew. Slow down, talk, share information, and get the call right. Take another look at this play. Another end-of-game situation where the defense is trying to foul. In this play, however, we see a jersey grab. We've all seen the jersey grab before. Sometimes it's called intentional, other times it's not. A jersey grab is typically performed for two reasons: to keep a player from obtaining an obvious advantageous position, or to stop the clock by fouling. Both of these situations demand an intentional foul be called by rule. Contact that neutralizes an opponent's obvious advantageous position and contact that is not a legitimate attempt to play the ball or player specifically designed to stop the clock or keep it from starting shall be ruled an intentional foul. Non-basketball plays demand being penalized with an intentional foul. In this play, the defender clearly grabs the jersey of the offensive player in an attempt to keep him from getting to an open spot. This is an intentional foul and an absolute. Now it's time for the "You Make the Call" portion of this segment. Watch this play a couple of times and decide if this is a no call, a common foul, an intentional foul, or a flagrant foul. We hope you enjoyed this week's instructional video. Special thanks go to the instructional committee who put countless hours and time into putting this and the other videos together, namely Will Kamey and Derek Anganis. Don't forget to go to www.ncoa.arbitersports.com, click on the testing tab, and take this week's quiz. We look forward to seeing you next week.